incredible depiction of a man who is sold out for his community, who wants to provide for his community, who wants to protect his community. What Nehemiah is explaining here is the fact that this is how he acted, not just when he was confronting these nobles and officials, but over the course of 12 years he lived this. He is showing an amount of authority for the teaching that he has just brought to these nobles and officials. Because in that time, under the Persian policy of government for which Nehemiah was granted governorship, he had the right as governor to receive a tax from the people to help support his household, his servants, and definitely his diplomatic expenses. But Nehemiah does not take anything. In essence, he forfeited his rights as governor, and he does exactly what this week's memory verse, 1 John 3:17, says. If anyone has material possessions and he sees his brother in need, but has no pity on him, how can the love of God be in him? What was the root of Nehemiah's forfeiting all of this? It's found in verse 15, when Nehemiah says that it was out of reverence for God. Because Nehemiah's reverence and ultimately his love for God is what led him to live this way. And what this means, though, is that for us, if God's love is truly in us and overflowing from us, we need to do and will be willing to do whatever it takes to confront the issues that we see in our community. And the key idea here that Nehemiah is getting at is sacrifice. Sacrifice, because it's not easy to live this way. In fact, what we can learn from this last part of Nehemiah chapter 5 is that by foregoing his rightfully due tax from these people, Nehemiah subsidizes his position as governor. And it wasn't just him and his family he supported. I think by doing this, Nehemiah, he basically underwrote out of his own pocket the expenses for 150 Jews and officials that were in his house and visitors from other nations. He paid for all of this out of his own pocket, his own personal savings account. Can you imagine if Arnold Schwarzenegger did that? I mean, if you need a car, you can have his Hummer, type of thing. I don't think that happens too often because it's so huge, because it takes sacrifice. Nehemiah had such love for his community, such a desire to see his nation indivisible, that he was willing to do anything to see it happen. Personally, I struggle with this. I really do. It is not my human nature to give sacrificially to the people around me. I don't think it's any of our natures to do that, because we humans, we like to look out for ourselves. And so there's something that we need. Something we need to ask God for to help us do this, and that is compassion. I want you to write that in, compassion. Because in chapter 5, the last part of verse 18, Nehemiah says, in spite of all this, I never demanded the food allotted to the governor because of why? Because, he says, the demands were heavy on these people. Nehemiah saw how much his community was suffering. He saw how much people were hurting in his community, and he had compassion on them.